to I Wish I Thought of That. I'm Sue Kershaw. This is really right in my face. Sorry. I'm the Development Director of SOFI, and if you don't know what SOFI stands for, it stands for the Showcase of Fundraising, Innovation and Inspiration. How many of you actually use SOFI at the moment? Well, it's not a full house yet, is it? So if you want to know where we are, www.sofi.org. Go visit it. I'd like to send some love today to somebody very special who can't be here from the SOFI family, so I'm sure she's listening. Hi! And hello to all our audience looking in on the live stream, that camera over there. So don't swear, please. Do you know, it's really quite scary up here. So, I really wish I'd thought of not volunteering to open today's proceedings, but there you go. Iwatop crowd, look at you all. You look absolutely amazing, more beautiful by the year. Who is here for the first time? Wow, quite a few of you. Who's been here for the second time? Okay, welcome back. Anybody here been for the third time? Oh, come on, we're getting into real fandom now. Anybody been here 4 times? Okay, now you're either stalkers or you really, really like fundraising. So now, I'd like to introduce you to the man who actually came up with the concept of Iwatop. He actually did it as a one-off event to fundraise for SOFI, and 6 years later, we're still doing it. So I expect he's kind of sad that he suggested it now. He's today's Master of Ceremonies. His name is James Briggs, and he's the co-founder and joint managing director of Open. Sorry. I'm just looking at Jan-Maria over there, and I've actually forgotten to do some housekeeping stuff. So, fire exits. 1 at the front next to the stage, 2 at the back at both ends, and the collection point is at the pavement in front of the main entrance. Toilets are through the red doors, left down the stairs. If you wish to use the lift, go to -3, and this floor is -1. Sorry about that, James. All over to you.
Hello. Welcome to Iwatop number 6. As Sue said, this started out as a kind of one-off, harebrained idea that we thought would be quite fun, and here it is. I was going to say 6 years later, but I think along the line we ballsed it up at one point and forgot, and so I think we missed a year, and then this one is 4 months late because we cocked it up again, but even with such resolutely high standards of event planning and management, we still made it to 6, which is a tremendous thing, unless, of course, you have been on stage for all 6 of them, at which point it kind of goes from making you feel really smug and happy to just feeling really old. It's just like having children. Mine, fortunately, still in school, so they'll have missed that bit. But we're obviously doing something right. Someone told me just before I came on stage, actually I should have done that differently, shouldn't I? Anyone here from the USA? You meant to go woo, but that's all right. So isn't that brilliant? Some people have actually flown here to see this. Yeah, welcome. So we're doing something right, and I think what we're really doing right is, you know, in keeping with our profession, is what's happening is we're giving and we're taking, and people are giving whatever they can and they're taking whatever they need, which seems like a sensible way to run things. So over the next few hours, we're going to be giving the hell out of it up here, and we've got some amazing people up here to speak. For the first time ever, we have an actual OBE in the house, so that's very exciting. What's also very exciting is that we have 3 people who are sort of at the beginning of the journey towards those levels of stratospheric worthiness, taking their first steps. We've got the winners of the, completely unacronymable I Want to Talk at That, who came in and auditioned and rehearsed and have kind of polished their presentations with the mentors. So thank you, mentors. We'll come back to that in a minute. But so these 3 are really putting it out there, and they're sort of taking a bit of a chance and coming up here and doing it for you lot. So you know, like OBEs, they are definitely your superiors right now. And as such, I want to hear a lot of love, even if they bomb, which they obviously won't. They're going to be good. Okay, so that's the giving bit of my tortuous introduction. The taking bit is the tricky bit, actually. Not the bit where you kind of all sit there and sort of tweet and listen and then go and drink the free beer. Just on that subject, if you want to tweet, make sure you get the hashtag right. We don't want any confusion, so it's just hashtag Iwitot. So please tweet up a storm while it's all happening, because everyone at Open at least all goes back the next day and does a Twitter search and basks in the excitement of it all. But no, that bit of taking, just the absorbing the information here, that's the easy bit. The difficult bit is then taking it out of the door back to your organisation and making it happen, and, you know, tearing it up and doing something different, but at least taking some of the inspiration from here. And, you know, I really hope that everyone here will see something this afternoon that they can take back. If you don't, or a bit requirement for your organisation, a tiny fraction of what's available over there. And so that brings me back to the giving bit. So as we said at the start, this always has been essentially a benefit gig for Sophie. And Sophie is a wonderful organisation that kind of struggles along on a bit of a shoestring and does amazing things with the money it gets. And they really need your support. So what I hope is that, you know, this afternoon, as well as buying tickets, we can try and raise a bit more money. Now, Sophie is very lucky. They have a kind anonymous benefactor who has offered to match up to £1,000 this afternoon if we can raise it. I'd love it if you all inferred that was me, but it isn't. It's someone else. I honestly have no idea who. I reckon £1,000 is probably doable. And the reason I reckon that is because I actually have a full copy of the guest list here with everyone's job titles and affiliations on it. So, you know, for example, let's say there's someone in the room who runs a charity recruitment consultancy that you all pay a bunch of money to. Or there's someone here who runs a kind of a strategic consultancy that you all pay a bunch of money to. Or there's someone here who runs a recruitment agency and a strategic consultancy and a telephone agency. It could happen. It could happen. Or you might be the managing partner of a big media agency with several of your clients here right now that I could point out to you. Or maybe you're just giving, and you've got, you know, tens of millions of pounds of cash just in a pile in reception. You know, just like that. Essentially, if you are a cheque signing person, please think about signing a cheque. 100 quid, couple of hundred quid, 500 quid would be brilliant. If we could do that, match the £1,000. This event already raises a bunch of money, and it all helps, and it all is really needed, because this is a tremendous resource that gets used a lot, and, you know, it's nice to give back to that, I think. Okay, so I think we're pretty much done. There are, you know, I'll do thank yous at the end. I'll also read out a list of all the people who gave, or all the people who didn't give, whichever is longer I'm going to go for. But I think we're okay. I think we're okay. We'll also probably get in touch with all of you again as well to ask you, because we'll have your mobile numbers, because at the end there'll be a vote. If you've been here before, you'll know how this all works. If you've ever worked with Open, you'll know that there will inevitably some kind of texting thing involved in it. But at the end, we'll ask you to choose your favourite talk / person / idea. It's never been particularly clear, but it adds an element of competition. It's something to talk about in the bar afterwards, and it's all very exciting. And it also means that we can stay in touch. GDPR hasn't come in yet, so we're just going to play fast and loose with that data. Just one last hurrah. Okay? So I think I've probably overrun, which is the #1 sin on this stage. I'm going to just shut up and hand over to our first speaker, who is John Grain from John Grain Associates.
Thank you. It's a real, if somewhat dubious, privilege to be first on stage. And as an introvert, I have to confess that when I found out I was having to go first, I was bemoaning the fact to my wife at home, and my son very helpfully pointed out to me this was actually a really good thing, because I wouldn't be following anyone who was going to be much funnier and much better than I was. And then James has screwed that up already. Anyway. Guess what I'm going to talk to you about today? Yep, balloons. In fact, vote balloon. Vote balloon. So, as James said, my name's John Grain. I've been in fundraising since 1989, when I started at Oxfam. And that means that I've seen nearly 30 years of fundraising campaigns, initiatives, ideas, lots and lots of good ones, a few absolutely brilliant ones, some crap ones, and a couple of real total turkeys. And when I was asked to do this, I truly, genuinely wondered whether I was actually too old and past it to do such an excellent event justice. And I wondered whether I was too cynical or too jaded, too pessimistic even. So I had to think about it. And initially, frankly, I decided I probably was. And then I discovered the balloons. And they're so good. Honestly, it is so, so good. And when I found out about it, it seemed absolutely perfect, because the first thing that went through my mind was, I really wish I'd thought of that. And I do, I truly do. So my story is about a charity called Shine. It's been around since 1966, and it provides specialist support from before birth and throughout the life of anyone living with spina bifida or hydrocephalus, as well as to parents and families and carers, professional care staff. And they're one of those relatively unknown organisations that do really tremendous work. It's immensely valued and valuable, particularly obviously to the people with those conditions and their families. And in fact, we're one of those organisations that I think sometimes rather patronisingly get called niche. One of those organisations that people are perceived to mainly support if they have a connection to it in some way, you know, if they're a family member or a friend, colleague, professional interest, you know what I mean. And my story today is also about corporate fundraising. And anyone who knows me, and I've seen a few friendly faces, thankfully, also knows that corporate fundraising isn't an area of expertise for me. I've managed to make a complete Horlicks of it a couple of times, working for different charities. And since then, I've generally pretty much left it alone. But, given the spirit of this great event, it's probably why I'm perfectly qualified to speak about it today, and about Shine. And about balloons. If anyone else in here is like me, a fraction north of 50, and been in fundraising for a while, you'll probably recognise scenes just like this. Back in the prehistoric days of fundraising, many charities hold sponsored balloon races. I worked at a couple of places that did them, albeit pretty half-heartedly, but the idea was simple, if crap for the environment. People would buy or sponsor a balloon. You'd set lots of them off at the same time to the sky, and whoever's balloon got the furthest would win a prize. And like many others that I've subsequently spoken to, most of them far more knowledgeable than me, I thought balloon races had long since been forgotten. They were kind of a minor footnote in fundraising history. And apparently, for most charities, it has, but not for Shine. Now, they ran corporate balloon races from the 1990s until 2009, when, on environmental grounds, they stopped. And now they do this. Virtual balloon races. So it's exactly the same concept. A case of wine for the winner, 2 runners-up prizes, and a booby prize for the first balloon to pop. You'll see why that's important in a minute. As you'd expect, now, companies, they can decorate and brand their balloon themselves, they can follow the race online, and if they wish, they can share their progress on social media, etc. And a balloon costs £40. And there are 10 races a year, or you can have your own bespoke race if that's what you'd like to do. And it all sounds pretty straightforward and a little bit ordinary, doesn't it? So why do I wish I'd thought of that? And there are 3 glaring reasons. Firstly, look at this. It's taken from their website where they publish all their results. They have the winner and the runners-up. What's amazing to me is the booby prize that's awarded to Hose Roads Dixon here. And they're a small estate agent on the Isle of Wight, in case you wanted to know. And they came last in this race, and they won that booby prize. In fact, they came 2,676th. And that's a lot of balloons. An awful lot of balloons at £40. In fact, that's over £107,000 worth of balloons in just one race. So what do you think about that? Here's the second reason. It's also taken from their website. 620,079 balloons launched. That is a lot of balloons. That's an awful lot of balloons at £40. In fact, that's nearly £25 million worth of balloons. And while you think about that, here's the final reason. Well, it would be. Just look at some of these names, okay? BAF Graphics Limited, Conference Care Limited, Cobweb Crafts, Crawley Consulting. These aren't big companies. Most aren't even medium-sized companies. They're small businesses or one-man bands given a really simple proposition they can afford, an entertaining game they can play, and the vast majority don't have any connection to the cause. But they do have a great relationship with Shine all the same. And what I find amazing is this small, relatively unknown charity has a programme generating hundreds and thousands of pounds of unrestricted income, year after year after year, from thousands of active corporate supporters. And as far as I know, no one else is doing anything remotely similar. And I wonder how many of us could say that. And that is why I think I wish I'd thought of that. Thank you. Vote balloon.
Thank you, John. That was a great one to get started with, wasn't it? I almost feel a bit sorry for that charity because the idea that they had no competition. Ruined it for them, haven't we? Right, okay. Without further ado, up next is Emily Collins-Ellis from IG Advisors.
Thank you. Now I've been told I'm the lapel mic guinea pig, so can everybody hear me with this here instead of me standing there? Great. So as I said, my name's Emily, and the idea I'd like to speak to you about today is a great one in its own right, and one that you should vote for. But the specific thing that I wish I had thought of is much bigger than this one example. And it's something I think we can all learn from and use in our work today. And that is collaboration between causes. So let me set the scene for this idea I wish I'd had. It's the mid-1980s. MTV has just started. Pac-Man has just been invented. We listen to music off these weird contraptions called cassette tapes, and the hairstyles are questionable. On a slightly less light note, the coal miner strike has been going on for months and will continue for almost a year. Margaret Thatcher has sequestered the funds of the National Union of Mine Workers, so anyone who wants to donate to support the striking miners has nowhere to send their money. Miners and their families are going hungry, being ostracized, facing police brutality on the picket lines, and being demonized by the media. Separately, the LGBT community is facing its own issues. AIDS is killing men at an alarming rate. Our bars, clubs, and social spaces are being raided by the police. Consenting adults are being registered as sex offenders or being arrested for public displays of affection. And Margaret Thatcher is leading a family values campaign that is whipping up public homophobia. Queer people are dying, being ostracized, facing police brutality at pride marches, and being demonized by the media. So with these two things in mind, the idea I wish I'd had is lesbians and gays support the miners. That's exactly what it sounds like. A group of queer people in London decided to band together, unite against their shared enemies, align their cause with the miners, and fundraise. And their work was dramatized in a 2014 film called Pride, which it sounds like some of you may have seen. I'd like to show you a short clip from it now.
And I've been dragging this thing on me on since Marble Arch. So where are their buckets?
I'm surprised you have to ask that question, Mike, coming from Accrington.
Mike, does anything get you blood points?
No. Where's Mark now?
Listen up, everyone.
Where exactly have you been?
I want everyone to take a bucket and start rattling. This is for the miners.
Miners? We agreed on the banner, Mark.
It's a show of solidarity. Who hates the miners? Thatcher. Who else? The police, the public, and the tabloid press. It sounds familiar?
Surely,
But
Mark.
the only problem we've got that they haven't is Mary Whitehouse, and that can only be a matter of time.
Mark.
I know it's not been planned, it's not been thought through, but it's a really good idea, isn't it? Isn't it?
What am I supposed to do with this?
Give it to the lesbians. They love a banner.
Oh, for God's sake. Right, looks like you're off the up, mate. Good lad. Whatever Mark says, we do it. Don't ask me why.
So, as it's my job to advise charities on fundraising strategy, I'd just like to caveat that I don't advise coming up with ideas in the middle of events and just running with them. But one of the things I really love about this idea is that it flies in the face of a lot of our instincts as fundraisers. Struggling to raise money for an unpopular cause, why add another unpopular cause to your responsibility? Struggling to raise enough money for your own community, why add more people and their needs into the mix? And if you're looking for partners that are happy and open and to be associated with you publicly, a queer group from London didn't expect to find that in a small mining village in Wales. But nonetheless, they pressed ahead and fundraising problems became fundraising solutions. So they rattled buckets at pride marches, deflecting homophobia by engaging people on an issue that the British working class were really getting behind. They invited miners to speak at big gay nights in the city, using them as fundraisers, but also forging connections between two groups of people that never usually would have met. And they did on-street fundraising outside Gays the Word, which is a bookshop in Bloomsbury. It's still there if you'd like to go and see it, stopping people to speak about the strike in a queer space that they would usually have rushed to avoid. And it worked. LGSM groups cropped up all around the country, and the founding London group raised over £11,000, which in today's money is about £30,000. It was the most money raised by any mining support group in the UK. It allowed the miners to stay on the picket line throughout the winter, and it gave LGSM members and the miners exposures to issues that they never usually would have known about. Now, as we all know, the strike ultimately ended unsuccessfully, but the partnership did not end there. The next year, the miners returned the support of LGSM at the Labour Party conference, tabling a motion to enshrine lesbian and gay rights into party policy. Now, motions like this had been tabled before, and they'd always been voted down. But in 1985, the National Union of Mine Workers used their block vote to get manifesto and policy commitments that paved the way for the same-sex rights that we have in the UK today. And in 1985, at the Gay Pride March, mine workers came up by the coachload from South Wales to march proudly alongside queer people in London.
What? You'll have to go to the front. You'll have to leave. No, hey, we're not losing our banners, mate.
What do you mean to? What's he mean to, Manny?
It's on the boat.
I think he means them.
Abercrave Lodge, Aberdare Lodge, Bargoed Circus Lodge, Fernhill Lodge, Bardy Lodge, Blind Lodge, Cambion Lodge, Burneside Plant, Mountain Ash Lodge, Dulles Valley Lodge, Lodgejoint, Oxford West Lodge, South Wales NUM Headquarters.
Sorry for the abrupt stop, but Bill Nye was about to launch into a speech that we just don't have time for. So there it is, that's my big idea, collaborating with an unlikely cause to push forward for both fundraising success and for social progress. And this isn't the only example of it. RSPCA and Women's Aid, for example, collaborated to create Pet Retreat, which is a fostering service for the pets of women who are fleeing domestic violence. Shakespeare Theatre Association has partnered with a number of prison charities and pigeon initiatives to create Shakespeare Behind Bars, which gives prisoners access to the arts. And nowadays there's a new LGSM, Lesbians and Gays Support the Migrants, which works with migrants and refugees in the UK. So my takeaway is this. In a sector where we're so often forced to compete with each other, and in a profession where we're always looking for new ways to get to new audiences and engage them with our work, perhaps unlikely partnerships and cross-cause collaboration is how we can all move forward together. Thank you.
Wow, that was brilliant, wasn't it? Nailed it, nailed it. And it just goes to show you can never have too many pictures or video clips in a presentation. It's only 7 minutes. Right, next up, big round of applause. We briefed you earlier. This is the first of our audition winners. This is Harry Owens from the Sepsis Trust.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for having me today. I'm really pleased to be here. As you've been told, my name's Harry, I'm from the UK Sepsis Trust, and yeah, I'm here, a little bit nervous as well. I'm very delighted to talk about the idea that I wish I'd thought of. But just before I do that, I've got a couple of stats for you guys written out on these big pieces of cardboard. So the first one is going to be that in the city of Greater London, 1 in 59 people are considered homeless, which leads to about 1,000 people sleeping rough on the streets every single night in London alone. And I think perhaps even more shockingly is that a recent survey found that 1 in 10 members of the British public think that these people are beyond help, that there's nothing that we can do to support them. So the event that I'd wish I'd thought of is not only an excellent fundraiser, but it's incredibly well suited to challenge those perceptions. So what is the event? Well, it's called a sponsored sleep out, and essentially that's exactly what it is. Members of the British public spending one night sleeping rough out on the streets in support of homeless charities across the UK. And these events are run nationwide by many organisations as members of the End Youth Homelessness Alliance. But the event that I specifically went along to is run by a Sheffield-based charity called Roundabout. Now, Roundabout were very clever when they were marketing their event. They know Sheffield has 50,000 students living in its city centre. So on the leafleting, on the advertisements for the event, it advertised free pizza, bar, celebrity guests. You know, it sounded like a really fun event. And when I showed up last November, most of the people there were young people with a group of friends looking to have a good night out, but also maybe a slightly different one as well. What I think Roundabout also knew that was perhaps even more clever was that the next day after participating in this event, these people would leave with an entirely new understanding of the realities of being homeless. But that's not to say that the event wasn't fun. The pizza was excellent. The bar was incredibly well stocked. There were speeches from charity staff. There was a wonderful account from a young woman who'd been supported by the charity and now helped them with their work, as well as a quiz and singing songs around the campfire. It was really good. 12 p.m., however, rolled around quite quickly, and that's, as the charity kind of said, when the Chew Challenge really began. It's when we had to try and get to sleep. So imagine for me, if you will, it's the end of November 2017. It's bitterly cold. You are lying there on a rock-solid concrete floor trying to get to sleep in your sleeping bag. You have to try and stay perfectly still so you don't let any cold air kind of seep in and chill you out. You have to remember as well that it was probably the worst night's sleep that I've ever had, far and away. And I had a great quality sleeping bag. I was wearing my thermals. I had a pillow that I brought from home. I had 3 pairs of really fluffy socks on. Not only that, but I just had a nice pizza, and I think most importantly, I knew that for me it was just for one night, and I knew that the charity would keep on watching us all night to make sure that we were perfectly safe. Now, these are luxuries that are not afforded to people who are actually homeless. I think the real educational part to take away from the event, however, was that sleeping wasn't even the most difficult part. It was waking up and getting on with the next day. As you can see, I felt horrible and I looked just as bad. Feel free to disagree. You know, or I just remember I just desperately wanted to brush my teeth. So we went straight home. I had a nice warm shower. I crawled back into my bed and had a nap for a few hours. And even still, I felt absolutely shattered for the entire day. I think what this really highlighted to me and to everyone at that event was that without the support of charities like Roundabout, how can we expect people to wake up after a horrible night like that and put their best foot forward to convince a landlord that they should rent them a room or to impress a potential employer in a job interview? And I think that without the support of these charities, that is an insurmountably difficult task to overcome. I think it's really important to highlight as well that Roundabout engaged with a demographic that is generally very difficult to get involved with fundraising, those 18 to 25-year-old young people. And not only did they get them involved, they involved over 80 of them at this event. And I know it says £13,000. They let me know yesterday that they've now raised over £14,000 from a single night event from people raising sponsorship. That's over £162 per person. I think that's a really incredible feat from a single night. So what's my takeaway? Why did I wish I thought of that idea? So I think if there's one thing I'd really like you to take away from my little talk today, it's that you should be trying to bring potential supporters closer to the charities faced by your beneficiaries. You know, show them the work that you do and why you're so passionate about the causes that you stand for. It's often said that fundraisers should be fantastic storytellers, that we have the best stories in the entire world to tell. Well, I would challenge you to go one step further. Don't just tell them about the work you do, but let people experience for themselves why your work is so important, the challenges that your beneficiaries face. And I guarantee you that if you're clever like Roundabout, and if you market that outside of your current supporter base, then you will have a group of new individuals that will be lifelong supporters for your charity. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you enjoy your afternoons.
Thank you, Harry. That was brilliant. What do I have to do to get the Beyonce microphone? That's what I want to know. Okay. Next up, keeping the pace going, we've got Sarah Wilson from Think.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah, as you can see, and the idea I wish I'd thought of all started when a group of people got together and decided they wanted to use their skills, experience and expertise to raise money to change lives. And the backgrounds of these people were in TV, comedy and charity. Now this year is the 30th year of this idea, and over the last 3 decades it's raised over £1 billion. So I think from that introduction, many of you will have probably guessed what I wish I'd thought of, which is Red Nose Day. So we all know about Red Nose Day, we've grown up with it. The first Red Nose Day happened in 1988. £15 million was raised and 30 million people watched that first programme. It's a multifaceted campaign built around the one day where we have a programme and we're entertained by comedians. I'm sure many of you have got favourite moments. One of mine was many years ago watching Posh and Becks being interviewed by Ali G for a particularly toe-curling half hour. We've got celebrities who dance for 12 hours, climb mountains. There's amazing corporate partnerships. But one of the incredible things about this is that it inspires and motivates so many people around the country to raise money. So in 1993, 72% of the UK population took part in Red Nose Day. And I think any of us in this room would take that level of participation and say thank you very much. But the one thing that I love and that I really wish I'd thought of about this is the red nose, and that as a symbol for the campaign. I just think it's amazing. So why I think it's amazing? It's so simple and straightforward. So this campaign is all about using comedy to raise money, and the red nose is a symbol that we all inherently recognise. We know, I mean, I'm mildly terrified of clowns and will run away to avoid them, but I understand what the red nose means. It's very simple. And then this simple symbol can be taken away and reproduced, and we can sell it and ask people to wear it. And we all talk about how motivating it is for people to be part of something bigger than them on their own. And the wearing the red nose enabled people to feel part of a wave, a community, a swathe of support across the country, everyone coming together to do the same thing to raise money. And when I was at school in the 80s and 90s, we wore a red nose every year. You had to be part of the club. So it also added to that peer pressure of kind of whether you wanted to or not, you should really be wearing one. And they're still popular now. In 2015, more red noses were sold that year than in any other year at over 7.5 million. And so the red nose, it's adaptable. The design changes every year, so people buy a different one every year because you can't be seen to wear the same one as last year. And I remember mithering my dad when I was young to buy one for the car as well. And it's evolving. So this year, Red Nose Day are asking children to enter a competition to design a red nose. The winner of the competition is going to be produced and on sale for the campaign in 2019. So they're involving their audience, as many commercial organisations and other charities do, involving in the design and the development of the product to help engage and increase sales for next time. And the red nose, as well as it being such a widely recognised symbol in the UK, is widely recognised globally. So because of this, the Red Nose Day concept, it's been able to be licensed nationwide, globally. So this is China, and last year they held their first Red Nose Day, and over 280 million people heard the Red Nose Day message. And in the States, they had their first Red Nose Day 3 years ago. And in the last 3 years, over $100 million has been raised. Last year, I think it was around 3 million red noses were sold. But more than anything with red nose is when I was back at school, many years ago now, it was the first thing where fundraising had been fun. Up to then at school, fundraising had been around depriving yourself of something for Lent or fasting, or there was an activity that was fun, but you were told that it was going to be fun. So I'm going to ask potentially a controversial question. Hands up those of you who like the phrase, put the fun into fundraising. Hands up. Maybe not as controversial as I thought. Hands up those of you who aren't a fan. So I'm with the larger group. I am not a fan of the phrase, put the fun into fundraising. I think it makes me think of anything where you have to put the fun in, inherently has nothing whatsoever to do with fun in its original form. And it makes me feel a little bit like it's enforced workplace fun, a little bit David Brent-esque. And so the red nose as a symbol, you inherently know it's fun and it's meant to be fun without having to have the fun shoehorned into it. So what do I think we can learn from this and take away? So make your concepts clear, simple and easy to understand. Find a way to make sure people feel part of something bigger, that community, they're not on their own. And involve people in the development of your campaign or your products. It might not be designing red noses, but could it be designing a fundraising item to go into a pack? And keep your concept true to what it is and what it means, but adapt and flex to ensure its longevity. And if your concept and the cause that you're raising money for will translate to different countries, why not look a bit broader and look to global markets to help us achieve the income growth that we're all striving for? So I don't know exactly who thought of the red nose. So if any of you do, please come up and tell me afterwards, because it's a brilliant idea and I really wish I'd thought of it. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. Doesn't comic relief look really kind of nuts and really fun in China? I think I want to go at that. Okay, our next speaker today is Bhavesh Dev from the Stroke Association.
Hello. Before I start, Dave is actually my surname. So I get that question all the time. People think I don't know what way my name is. So before, good round of applause, I might just leave. Before I actually tell you what I wish I'd thought of, I thought I'd share a few interesting facts about the topic without actually telling you what it is. So this topic has increased by 360% over the past 10 years. There's a clue, it's not shark attacks. These products have grown by 92% in Australia last year alone. Google Trends show a massive 90% increase in the searches in 2016. And there's a clue, it's not Americans wanting to immigrate to Canada. And this movement has grown in 4 years from 3,300 to 60,000 in 2017. Can anyone guess what they think? Sorry? No. Veganism. And so what I wish I'd thought of was Veganuary. Just out of curiosity, is there anyone here who's doing Veganuary? Brilliant. So why do people go vegan? My story began when I was quite drunk in December on a train home after a Christmas party, and I saw a poster on the Underground. And then I started doing a bit of research, went onto their website, and actually there's 4 main reasons why people decide to go vegan. The first is animals. So animals perceive, feel pain, enjoyment, excitement, just as much as humans do. The health benefits, that's the second biggest reason why people decide to go vegan. The environment. If you're vegan, it's better than giving up your car, and you can reduce half the amount of greenhouse gases to save the planet. And nutrition. It's now easier than ever to be able to be vegan and actually not have to worry about where you're going to eat. And even just recently, Tesco's have launched a whole new product range. I got an email from a steakhouse for January having vegan food on the menu there. So I want to talk to you about an advert that people have probably seen. Generally, you see it on posters and TVs, and I've blanked out the name of the brand here, but I'm sure you'll probably know who it is. The poster says, "Great organic taste at a fair price. We milk cows, not people." The truth is, if actually people understood how the cows are milked, I think they'd think quite differently. So, calves. When a calf is born, generally within 24 hours it's separated from its mother, and the main reason for this is that it doesn't drink the milk that we all want for our skinny lattes. If the calf is born male, then within 24 hours, more often than not, it's killed because it's basically useless. It can't produce milk. If it is kept alive, it's generally done for about 6 months and then turned into some low-grade meat. The life of a dairy cow, it's basically starts with it being born. Within 24 hours, it's separated from its mother. If it's a female, if it's a cow, then it's basically kept alive, artificially inseminated. Once it starts producing milk, it's milked constantly. The calf is born, separated from its mother within 24 hours, and that process continues. Cows in the wild would generally live for about 25 years. Dairy cows normally last until about 8 or 9, and then they're killed because they can't produce any more milk or any more cows. One thing that was really interesting for me is that we're the only species that drink other animals' milk. No other animals or no other animals do that. So why did I choose Veganuary? It's a really simple concept. Basically, go vegan within January, make a donation, and that is it. It's growing on a movement. So Veganuary saw an opportunity, and within the 10 years, veganism has been growing at such an amazing rate. And they decided that what they could do is piggyback off the back of this growth. It ties into their aims and objectives of making people go vegan. And actually, it's a really easy concept for people to be able to take on board now. You get 31 days of support. So every day they email you, they tell you recipes, they tell you what celebrities have gone vegan, what sports personalities, and sports personalities who are at the top of their game now, despite the kind of stereotype of vegans eating mouldy mushrooms, not washing, dreadlocks, kind of looking like Swampy. They make you feel as though you're part of a movement and that you're part of a tribe. And to be honest, I done it because I could do with losing a bit of weight, and I suffer from FOMO, the fear of missing out. So there's so many other people doing it. I wish I wanted to be part of that as well. But for me, what is one of the most interesting things is on their website, they show you all the food that is accidentally vegan. So here's some of them. Brilliant. Can eat as many Oreos as I want. Doritos. But the thing that really sealed it for me was this. Two things that are always in my fridge, and that for me that was the biggest selling point. But so why do I love Veganuary? Like I said, they're capitalising on the movement. This year alone, they've had 160,000 people sign up from over 170 nations across the world. They're agile and quick thinking. Within 6 weeks, they got approached by 3 publishers, and they launched a book on Amazon, and it's one of the top 20 books. Increase in sign-ups, they've gone from 3,300 to over 160,000 in 4 years. 67% of people that took part last year said that they are going to remain vegan, and the number of lives saved. They estimate that last year over 85,000 lives across the world were saved, animals' lives were saved through people being vegan. And that's why I wish I'd thought of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavesh. That was fantastic. Is anyone here doing Veganuary and Dryathlon simultaneously? Yes. Someone back at work. That looks brutal. Right. I keep trotting up here because I have to click the button that takes it onto the next speaker's name. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I should stop. Next up, Sally Falvey from Just Giving.
Hi everyone, I'm Sally Falvey. I'm Head of Brand and Content at Just Giving. It's really great to be here today, and all the ideas have been inspiring so far. I can't wait to hear the rest. I'm about to do a 15-minute presentation in 7 minutes, so hold on to your seats. It's going to be a wild ride. So, what's the idea that and I've turned it off. Awesome. There we go. What's the idea I've thought of? So it is called Forced to Flee, and it was created by the lovely team at Save the Children, and it was an immersive experience to really bring to life to people the experience that children feel when they're fleeing conflict and violence. So when entering the space, people were given a child's backpack and a headset, and they heard real voices of children telling them what it was like to escape conflict. People were led through dishevelled classrooms. There were bullet holes on the chalkboards. It was very, very evocative. But at the end, there was sanctuary, and there was an uplifting play area where the children could feel like children again. And it was in order to bring back play into their lives. I'm hoping I'm doing it justice, but I think this video will do it much better than I can.
Hello. Thanks for meeting me here. I'll be with you the whole time to guide you. This is your journey. Find the empty desk that has your number on the back of the chair and sit down.
We were at the school playing and we saw an aeroplane above. It was dropping missiles on the village. We heard very big explosions. Everyone started screaming. We were very scared.
We left our village because armed groups were there and attacking houses.
We had to crawl under barbed wire. They said we had to keep our heads down, otherwise they would shoot us.
terrified.
This is a child-friendly space. We've set them up all over the world, wherever they're needed. They're spaces where children can come to be children, where they can breathe again and feel cared for by adults.
I don't want to leave this place. I really love it here. I feel much happier now.
So where they can feel safe and they can feel protected by adults. That's really powerful stuff. And maybe it's because I'm a parent and I'm about to be again. It really hits me in the gut. So, and the feedback they got from the event was great. Imagine if you could make your event participants feel like this. I couldn't speak for the first few minutes because of the lump in my throat. I'm sure we must have all left determined to do more to help the cause. I learned a lot about your work and it made me proud to be a committed and long-term supporter of Save the Children. Now, I'm channeling Mystic Meg and going to guess what perhaps some of you are thinking. Did this actually generate any income? Yes, I don't have the numbers, I'm sorry, but if I do, I'll tweet them and share them with you all. How much did this cost? It did cost a lot of money, but what I thought was really creative is that Save the Children engaged a major donor that they'd known for years and worked with them to fund their creative idea. And you might also be thinking, Sally, our charity doesn't have the resources to pull off something like this. Well, maybe, maybe not. But what I'd urge you all to do is look at the principles that Save the Children apply to this event and take them back to your organisation. So what made this, and I wish I'd thought of that idea, and what can we take back to our organisations? The killer thing, it made people feel something. And there's two emotions that I'd really took away from this. The first one is empathy, and for me that's all about driving giving and loyalty and having a real connection to your cause. And the second one is pride, because pride is what drives advocacy. So let's dig into those emotions. Empathy, when you're thinking about that and helping to invoke that emotion in people, how can you bring your supporters closer to your beneficiaries and the impact of your organisation? And then how can we all create a real connection with our causes and really help people understand, even if they're thousands of miles away from what's going on? A practical example, if you haven't checked it out, this is the National Autistic Society's campaign, Too Much Information. It's an immersive experience as well, but they're using VR technology to bring it to life. The tech was quite expensive, but it's coming down in cost year on year, so it's something you could embrace. But even something different to that, you could be looking at Facebook Live and you could be looking at video to bring that to life as well. And that second emotion of pride, well, pride is so important because it's how can you make people feel special enough that they're proud and they want to share their experience, whether that's word of mouth, I went to this really cool immersive experience, or sharing it on social. Because the truth is that people that are made to feel special engage more with your cause. Anthony Nolan are doing this really well at London Marathon. The simple idea, give the top 5 London Marathon runners a different coloured vest to everyone else. Bit of friendly competition, and they're seeing fundraising income grow as a result. Unique experiences are social, and they make people feel proud to share them. Tough Mudder, case in point, my friend sharing this on Instagram. And then remember those lovely quotes I shared earlier after the event? But that's because passionate personal voices raise and give more money to causes. This is my friend Karen talking about her husband Dave on Facebook, and he was running the Berlin Marathon for Gosh. And they got a tour of the hospital, and you'll probably need some time to read this afterwards. It's so powerful. She was so engaged by that experience. She thought it was amazing, and it moved all of us to give straight away. And not only that, 2 months later, Dave's doing it again, and he's now doing 2 marathons in 2 weeks for the cause. So you can see how that rich, compelling experience at the hospital really engaged him and is bringing him back to support the charity. So in summary, take inspiration from the underlying principles and ingredients that Save the Children got so right with Forced to Flee, and always think about the user experience in everything you do. Compel people to feel and share. And a thought to end on, inspiring someone to think, feel, or do something equals more support, depth, breadth for longer. So what experiences will you create? Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sally. Having complained about having to go up and change the slide, I was thinking why have we got this hashtag slide? It's just making my life difficult. Apparently, Iwitot is now the 5th most talked about thing on Twitter right now. So, not good enough, I say. So I'm gonna leave that up there a little bit longer, so that our next speaker can change on to his introduction slides. Darryl Upsall.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Is this mic on? I can't tell from here. Yes, thank you very much. You all seem to have one of these, is that correct? Now, thanks to Mr. Ken Burnett here, I went to China in November 2006 to speak at the first China International Fundraising Summit. Ken was part of the advisory panel, and off I went, along with some other fundraisers from around the world, including from the UK. It's a great bunch of people. We were in a conference centre where they had the China Charity Fair, which if you think of a venue the size of Olympia in London, double it, that's how full it was of thousands of Chinese voluntary, not-for-profit organisations. Gongos. Anybody know what a gongo is? A government-organised, non-governmental organisation. I tell you, only in China. But anyway, there are only 511,000 of them registered since the new law came in, so there are quite a few. Anyway, after my presentation, I started talking with some of the people there and took out this. It's a Samsung 5 or whatever, and said, let's keep in touch through WhatsApp. And then they wanted to look at my apps. And this presentation is just showing how far behind we are compared to China, because these 20, 30-year-old fundraisers looked at my phone, looked at my apps, and just went, dinosaur, prehistoric. So my session is called Chinese Takeaway, Reinventing Fundraising in the People's Republic of China, and I will race through it now. China, like in many things, has a national strategy on Internet Plus. This means the application of internet and the integration of internet across everything, industry, banking, business development, everything you could imagine, including philanthropy, inside Internet Plus, the Prime Minister's stated national policy for the country, because it's essential for the economy. Another thing, Alipay. Now we've got PayPal and we've got all these things, minuscule by comparison. Just in one day last year, Alipay, the online payment system, all through the cell phone, forget laptops, iPads, any of that, everything is on the cell phone. 25.3 billion in 24 hours. 1.58 billion payments were through the mobile phone, 90% of them. Everything is on the phone. Social media sites growing enormously, but the great thing is everything is in one location. Imagine having your Facebook, your Amazon account, your banking account, your LinkedIn, your WhatsApp, and everything else in one app. So whatever you do, it's there. You go to a shop, you just wave your phone over the Starbucks counter. No cash, no credit cards, not even those little cards that get read these days. Martin Sorrell, who some of you may have heard of, is based here. He's the head of the biggest single conglomeration of media advertising agencies in the world. Says we need to watch out for Tencent and Alibaba, because these are going to take over the world, and they already are beginning. So just as you can't do Facebook, you can't do LinkedIn, you can't do WhatsApp in China, both of those companies are moving into our space. They are expanding globally, buying up and setting up. We have no rules against it outside of China. Even for a toy, 71% of people are buying their toys online, all toys, and mostly by the cell phone. It's taken over. And although Open are great pioneers here in using cell phone technology and so forth, I think all of us in the West are behind the curve when it comes to China. Give you an idea, there is a giving day in China. Okay, it's only just beginning, but just in one day, 41 million just announced giving day, and it's bringing in 40% of its money from students. And again, a bit like Comic Relief, where we're looking at how do we start to engage younger people. What's very interesting in China is the beginnings of philanthropy are not happening with 55 Dorothy donors, 65, 75. How old are you, Ken? Sorry, no. Just checking if you were not hashtagging there. I know you're good on that. They're bringing in right at the beginning, philanthropy is beginning with a younger generation, and they're using the cell phone to do it. Are we learning from them? And here's the great firewall of China. We can't raise funds in China. You cannot, as a British international, you can't as any of the big INGOs, and only a few UN agencies now can raise funds in China. It's forbidden. Other little example, tiny organization, it's called WABC. It's raising funds for kids with learning difficulties in China. Tencent and WeChat, again owned by the same conglomeration of companies, made a little campaign to raise some funds. Alipay did a little campaign here, again to engage people in environmental issues. It's very interesting when you go to China. The images we see on TV are these horribly, horribly polluted cities, and they are, very often. Certainly when I was at Greenpeace, we were getting, and that was in the 90s, we were getting requests from Chinese mayors of big cities saying, please come do something, help us. So we set up Greenpeace China very early. This is a way in which they were looking to engage people in growing trees, being greener, doing sort of activities. And this little campaign called Ant Forest was each time you make a payment with Alipay, you're receiving green energy. That green energy creates a virtual tree, and it gets you engaged in a discussion and debate about environmental issues. Like everything in China, 200 million people participated. Okay, the money for the foundation is small, 3 million, but just watch this space. Why does China have an impact? Why does China today, what does China today, has an impact on the rest of us? Sorry, it's a new typeface I hadn't seen. I think the reason for looking at this is China is where massive change is happening. It's changing the way mass philanthropy is taking place, and it is the way in which we need to be looking if we want to massively engage very large numbers of donors in our causes, and then, unlike the Chinese at the moment, take them on a journey. To give you an idea, I'm speaking with a client of ours, One Foundation, tomorrow morning. They're based in Shenzhen in China. Tony, who I work with, Ken knows Tony, said, was told by his bosses, you've got to go out and get monthly donors next year. So he said, okay, I'll do a test. He got 900,000 monthly donors in a bloody test, for God's sake. So I close this presentation by saying, using a Chinese proverb, to know the road ahead, ask those coming back. So ask people coming back from China, ask other nations what they are doing in innovation, particularly in the East. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Gongo. That's brilliant, isn't it? Alfie, where are we trending? 2. Keep plugging away, people. We're going to get up there. Okay, next up is Carol Akawumi from the RAA Solutions.
Thank you. Hi. I chose this campaign because I'm always looking for the underdog to represent. And I thought that this organization was doing some amazing things, and at a time when religious causes aren't very popular. I thought their campaign was courageous, it was very topical, it was practical, but it was also bang on their mission. In 1804, Mary Jones, a teenage girl from a disadvantaged community, walked 26 miles from her village to the town of Bala in North Wales in search of a Bible. The minister who she got it from was so concerned about this that on his next trip, he shared the story incredulously with some of his mates in London. And these were people like William Wilberforce and members of the Clapham sect. They were equally outraged that anyone in their day would have to walk so far, the length of a marathon, to access the Word of God. So they decided to set up a society to meet this urgent need in Wales. And in keeping with the times, somebody said, why stop at Wales? Why not the whole world? And so the British Foreign and Bible Society was born. For 200 years, more than that, in fact, Bible Society has been working to bring the Bible to life, to help people around the world to engage with it, to relate to it, and to make sense of it. And even you will admit that's not very easy today. They believe that the Bible is still relevant for us today. The words in it are life, and that when people engage with the scriptures, that their lives can change for good. And so at Christmas, their fundraising campaign was entitled The Greatest Journey. And it retraced the steps of another Mary, the journey of another Mary, the mother of Jesus, her husband Joseph, who was Jesus' earthly father, the shepherds, and the wise men, a story that we're all very familiar with. But ultimately, they also pointed to the reason for the season, the greatest journey of all, when Jesus left heaven and came to earth as a man. To tell this story, Bible Society provided an incredibly useful resource at what is traditionally a very busy time for church leaders, for teachers, for children church workers. It was a pop-up nativity along with a full script, matching visuals and a video, all for free, that people could download. This was obviously such a useful resource that they got about 5,000 downloads. Although it's impossible, to trace all the results of this campaign, for me, one of the really clever things was that they linked it to the story of refugees. Not refugees like our American friends here, but real ones who are fleeing Syria and Iraq. You see, they asked their supporters to think about the journeys that these people are making. Last year, I had the opportunity to visit one of the largest refugee camps in Jordan. And the refugees I met over those few harrowing days, their stories told about what they truly considered their greatest journeys. There are some other things for me that really also bring out why this campaign was really wonderful. You see, when people ordered their free resource, Bible Society asked them for, at the very least, an email address. And this gave them some acquisition. And the free booklets alone generated around 100, actually, about 1,000 new callable contacts. In addition, the pop-up nativity helped to sell other related resources, booklets, and they had orders up to a total of 160,000. They had a wide range of groups, actually sharing the photos and videos of the pop-up nativity that they had done. And here are a few that I found on Twitter. People just sharing pop-up nativity hashtag. And of course, as you can imagine, groups, schools, churches who'd taken a collection have been sending their donations in. Here's a little snippet of the Greatest Journey video. The clever thing is that it's narrated by a Welshman, no less. And it's so much fun. Enjoy.
We're going on a journey. It's going to be a long one. All the way to Bethlehem, 'cause Caesar wants to count us. Uh-oh. Romans. Tall, scary Romans. We can't jump over them. We can't crawl under them. Oh no! We'll have to walk between them. Steppity-step, walkety-walk, steppity-step. We're going on a journey. It's going to be a long one, got to find a place to stay, 'cause Mary's having a baby. Uh-oh, no bed, no comfy, bouncy bed. We can't stay in the hotel, we can't stay in the spare room. Oh no, we'll have to sleep beside the animals. Oh, cluck, cluck, we're going on a journey. It's going to be a long one. An angel came to see us, told us of a saviour. So we're gonna welcome him. We find him in a manger. Uh-oh, sheep poo, smelly, stinky poo. We can't fly over it, we can't tiptoe round it. Oh no, we'll have to tread on it. Tread, squelch, tread, squelch, tread, squelch. Ugh.
I wish I could have shown you the whole thing, but 7 minutes isn't very long. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I'm not sure what the scriptural basis for the poo bit was, but I know my children would love that. Okay, we're on to our last speaker before half-time, a man who probably doesn't need much introduction, but it's Mark Astorita from Astorita Aldrich Ward.
Thought they were going to say that's lush. Hi, everyone. What I'm going to talk to you about today is something that, you know, they say you shouldn't live your life with regrets. And that's such a load of crap. Because, you know, I regret not asking Melissa to dance at the school disco. And I regret not bringing this idea from Holland to the UK. For the last decade, I've wanted to. Tonight, today, I've at least got a chance to show you. And there are some bits in Dutch, so maybe Daryl might have to translate, but we'll see. And before anyone asks, it was Imogen that decided Astorita went first, and it's only Tobin's mum that's really upset about that. So the challenge, and I think a challenge and why I want to show you this is, I can't think of anyone that's really made radio work for charity. It really is hard to do, and this idea really cracked it. And when you see it, you'll go, oh, that's a bit big, I can't do that. And well, but the simple concept in here is something that can be done in any school hall, in any disco, in any nightclub, or any stadium. The thought behind it remains the same. So what happened, and the story behind it, is in 2004, a couple of DJs wanted to do something for Beslan, which the kids had been killed in a terrible terrorist attack. They went to the Dutch Red Cross and said, we'd like to do something. They said, hey, you know what? We've already raised enough money. In fact, the appeal we ran at the British Red Cross lasted 1 hour, and £300,000 later we closed it. That happened around the world. And they turned to the guys and said, do something serious, do something for places and people that no one is doing anything for, do something for Darfur, and do something serious. They came back and said, okay, we'll do that, and we'll do that in a few days, 20th of December, in the days leading up to Christmas, for 5 days. And we will come up with something that will get people to give for a request. And they came up with this radio station. It was a pop station, 15 to 30-year-olds, 12% of the audience share, and they came up with Serious Request. This is 2004. And the idea was public radio, Red Cross, raising money for silent emergencies in the run-up to Christmas. You pay to get your favourite song on air. Why not pay for your favourite song to get on air? And the concept of turning radio into a fundraising event was take it off the radio and make it into an event. And they got a glass house. It was a basic studio, stuck it in a town square, and locked 2 DJs in there for 24 hours, live broadcasting and token fasting in the run-up to Christmas. So it was the antidote to Christmas. No gifts, make a gift to people in Darfur who at that time were suffering horrendous humanitarian crisis. And this is what it looked like. It was a basic glass box, and people started turning up to the square with bucket loads of cash. They didn't expect anyone to come with cash, and lots of people did. They raised £900,000 in their first year. And what was happening was people were paying for their songs to be played, and of course if you bought more money you had more chance to get your song played, and immediately people started to latch on to the product, started their own private fundraising initiatives, raising cash, turning up, raising money from bake sales, cookie sales, you name it, turning up with their wheelbarrow full of cash. The Dutch Red Cross had made no plans to handle cash. There were a lot of bicycles running around with panniers full of cash that night. And of course all the celebrities started turning up. Government started to get interested because this was a big gig, and the square started to get filled. They were able to start selling things, auctioning things, doing all the things you know that we could see in Comic Relief today, and all off the back of a radio show that was starting to be filmed on the news and so forth. They ran a call centre. People were making donations online in order to get their song played. Of course, they couldn't play all the songs that people were paying for. This is what they've managed to do up until now. And in the years around 2006 up to 2010, the government was matching them, and every year they were funding things that were not popular in the world. And each one of those were in often in fragile states, which were not raising big money on big appeals. You can see what's happening now. It's starting to wane, but then radio has waned. Their market share has gone from 12 to 4%. No one listens to the radio anymore, unless you're my age. They have raised over €100 million, and half the population in Holland participate in some shape or form in Serious Request. It is huge. Everyone knows Serious Request in Holland. And this is 2016. This is what happened. The couple in the middle paid €6,000 to be on air and get married on air. 24 live hours of internet broadcasting, bucket loads of cash, and, well, watch this.
Dit is het begin, 3FM Serious Request 2016.
En €594.
Jij hebt een plaat aangevraagd voor 3FM Serious Request.
Dio en tijdmachine. €25.
Beautiful Day voor you too.
21 Pilots. €20. Wat ik heb gedoneerd is meer dan €1000.
Ja, ze hebben in totaliteit dus €209,30 opgehaald. Wow. Tijn is 6 jaar. En in mei hebben we te horen gekregen dat hij ongeneeslijk ziek is. Dit is zijn laatste Serious Request. En hebben we samen besloten om mensen uit te dagen, 3 mensen uit te dagen, om hun vingernagels te lakken. En dan €1 te doneren. En als je ze niet wilt lakken, om dan €10 te doneren. Heb je dit al vaker gedaan?
Ja.
Hoe vaak al?
2 of 3 keer. I got the eye of the tiger.
Staat inmiddels op €120.000.
Wij zijn hier voor Serious Request, omdat we de kinderen in Afrika niet willen laten stikken. Wij hebben heel veel geld opgehaald en dat gaan we hier inleveren.
Dus wij hebben net nog een gigantische cheque overhandigd. Ja, uiteindelijk heeft dat geresulteerd in een chequebedrag van €30.000.
En ik moet eventjes de brievenbus lezen, want er wordt zoveel geld gedoneerd. Blijf het ook doen, hè.
Just like fire, burning up the way, rocking the world up for just one day.
Hallo? Nee! Dit geloof je niet. Aangenaam, ik ben Frank van der Lende.
Nou, mijn naam is Mark Rutte, ik ben van de regering. Ik ben de slaapgast van vannacht. Dus.
Mark Rutte is binnen. Wat?
become huge in Holland. Every night, 10,000 people pack into the square. Cities vie to have the glass house, the central state studio in their city. Anyone can do a serious request in any room, any nightclub, any stadium. It's a brilliant idea. It's raised 100 million. Big it up for the serious request and the Dutch Red Cross.
Thank you, Mark. I think we learned something there. If you see something really, really, really good, don't wait 12 years. Get stuck in. Right, okay, that is the end of the first half. I now have to do some housekeeping announcements, which is tricky as I don't have the bit of paper, but hey, there it is. Okay, so if you go through the doors left and go downstairs, that's where the tea and coffee will be, so please hustle down there. Please don't hang around in reception. People in this building do very important work. Don't need you disturbing them while they're protecting human rights worldwide. So yeah, just hustle down there and we can all hang out down there. If you're a smoker, why? Seriously, stop. But it's really bad for you. But if you do want to smoke, if you could go outside and just go a little way away. Just, again, don't make Amnesty look bad. I think that's about it. Thank you very much for your, your support and for being here. And we've got just as many fantastic ideas in the second half. Thanks very much, everyone. Right, can you hear me? Shh. Right, we're running a little bit late, and the whole thing about this, it's meant to be, you know, keeping it moving. So if you could all take a seat. While you're doing that, I'll do the lost property. This is quite fun. I've got a rather nice fossil watch that I'll be taking home unless anyone claims it before the end of the evening. I also have this. Someone's going to be worried about losing this. It's a digital, like a getting into an office or a house digital tag thing. It has the number 429 on that. Hopefully will reveal to someone that it's theirs, but sadly won't let me get into where... Hey, there we are, we found one. Whose watch is it? Excellent. Right. Okay, back for the second half. Like I said, we're starting 5 minutes late, so if all the presenters could shave about 40 seconds off their presentations, we'll be absolutely... Look, Owen's going to just going to take the whole lot. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Is everybody in? The fun is about to begin. Don't all stare. It'll just make people feel awkward. Okay, we're back. Keep on tweeting, because I've got the bit between my teeth now. I want to be at number one. Hashtag Iwatop. But up next is Lisa Harwood, who's Director of Community at the RNLI.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me down there? Lovely, thank you. The year was 1991. Donald Trump had just proposed to Marlon Maples, and Desert Storm was in progress. It was around this time of the year, and I'm not going to tell you how old I was because I'll give my age away, and please don't guess. I was a rookie community fundraiser. Now I'm Director of Community Lifesaving and Fundraising at the RNLI, but I have always been and will always be, in my beating heart, a community fundraiser. And so, Mark, how many years did it take you before you brought your idea back from Holland?
12.
I'll see you 12 and I'll raise it 25. We're going to have a bit of jailhouse rock, because the event that I want to talk to you about, and really, honestly, don't really care about votes. What I want is just at least one person from this room today to go away and do that. And if you decide you want to do one of these after I've done this presentation, I will personally mentor you through this process. That's how much I love this event. First thing to do then, pick your location. So, first of all, oh, don't break the microphone, sorry. Pick your location. So you have to pick a location that has footfall. The idea here, and if any of our American colleagues want to come up here and help me describe this, because you know all about this, this is where it came from. Pick an area where there are lots of offices, teams, with bosses they don't like very much, and they want to get them out of the office for a couple of hours on a Friday afternoon. You find that market, you've got your location. And you also need a location for the actual physical jail, because there is an actual physical jail. Next, you then go out to all those people in those offices who want to get their boss out of the way for Friday afternoon, and you get them to buy an arrest warrant. Now, what we generally try and do is say you have to whip round the office, you have to buy the arrest warrant by having a whip round a collection, get a Just Giving platform, start putting the donations up there. And usually what we do is we take a look at how much money the team raised to put their boss in jail, we double it, and that's how much the boss has to raise to get out of jail. And then you start to book your slots. So you really need to make sure that it's just out of courtesy. The boss does know they're going to jail and they're okay with that. I'll tell you why in a minute when I tell you what we did at the RNLI, and we forgot about telling the boss. But anyway, book your slots. And if you're really clever, you can sell slots. So if you know someone who's trying to sell something to someone else in another business, then they can pay extra to be in the jail at the same time as the person they're trying to sell something to. 2 weeks before the event, you let the prisoners know they're coming to jail, and you let them know roughly, because there's wiggle room here, how much their bail is going to be. And then they start fundraising. And then you get this two-horse race between the team trying to raise money to keep the boss in jail longer, and the boss trying to raise money to get out of jail quicker. It's a glorious thing to watch if you're a fundraiser. On the day, you build the jail. Now, these things can last for a day, a week. I wouldn't do it for more than a week, but a day and a week. Sometimes, I think there are laws against that, but sometimes you can actually have a jail. Plymouth I think. The Southwest Children's Hospice in Plymouth actually do get the police to put people in jail, which is a real hoot. They love it. These guys over here, they don't get a real jail. They're in a shopping mall, and it's a bit like a zoo. People just go and point and kind of throw coins at them, but still, a hoot. Right, and then you go out and arrest them. Again, Plymouth are great at this. They do, the police do actually go and arrest people and put them in a police van and drive them to the jail. You can see they love it. They're having a great time. And that's when you reveal the bail amount. So your prisoners then come into the jail. Sometimes you have a celebrity judge in the garb and the wig with the gavel. Or is that an auctioneer? Anyway, you know what I mean. But they then set the bail, and it depends. It depends who your judge is. It depends how generous they're feeling. That depends on how much the staff have raised as well to keep the boss in jail. So you bring them in, and then they start raising money. Now, they raise money by ringing their friends. You can set them up an online giving platform so that they can bring in the donations online in real time. Back in 1991, when I did it, we didn't have such a luxury. And what I love about this event is it has grown into itself, because this event was made for digital giving platforms before digital giving platforms. So it's actually way ahead of its time when I used to do it. And a lot of the slog that the fundraisers used to have to put into this, you don't have to put in anymore. For example, 1991, that is what a mobile phone looked like. And we had to buy those and put them in the jail and plug them in so that the jailbirds could use them. Now all our jailbirds already have them. They've got those. So that's one problem out of the way. We used to have collection boxes in the jail so that people could give cash as donations, but now we've got contactless. So that removes the risk and it removes the money handling. Does anybody remember? Mark, you'll remember these, right? And Ken, you'll remember big old Rolodexes. Do you remember those? They used to have to cart these things into the jail with them and start going through them on the big brick phone to try to get their money and their pledges. Now, they've got this and they've got, this is so easy. Why is nobody doing this? They now just use their phones because it's all on there. And here's the other thing. We used to have to take donation forms, pledge forms, fill them out when they're in the jail, get the pledge, and then we had to schmucks in the office 3 days later, put them all in envelopes, post them out to the people, and get them back. And we had about a 50% return rate. Because of course they're going to say they're going to donate, and then they never send the check back, do they? But not now, because they've got to raise their money on a digital giving platform. So they're not coming out until that money is on that digital giving platform. Now, we did this. So we did at the RNLI a version of this. We called it RNLI Boss in a Boat, and this is one of the great things about this event. Some people today have talked about bringing the event closer to your mission, and that's really, really important. And so we decided to tweak this a little bit and bring our mission to the jail and bail. Now, this was right in the middle of the financial crash. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but here's what we forgot to do. We forgot to mention to people like the Chief Finance Officer for Business and Retail Banking at Barclays in Canary Wharf that he was going to be arrested by Stormy Stan, which is fine. But when your PA rings the Chief Finance Officer of Barclays and goes, there's somebody here who wants to arrest you in the middle of the financial crash, not so good. We caused a minor panic around Canary Wharf because all the bankers thought they were getting arrested. But the good thing is that in that minor panic, they decided that they had better start to redistribute some of those banking bonuses. And boy, did we benefit as a result of that. So that's what we did to them. So we took them out. We actually had that boat in Canary Wharf. So that's an inshore lifeboat. It's an Atlantic 87 for the lifeboat geeks amongst you. But essentially, we had 3 crew members and we had 3 prisoners. The prisoners were on there for an hour each, and they put this on their Just Giving platform. And essentially, they were saying that they were not allowed to come back until they had raised their money. Now, you can do the sums on this, but whilst they were on there, by the way, our crew were telling them all about the RNLI, and they were getting to look around the lifeboat, and a few of the more responsible ones got to drive it a little bit. A little bit. But one of the things that it's easy to forget here is if you do get the right location, and if you do get the right people, this is what happens. We set their bail at £10,000 each. And he did it straight away. It took him about half an hour. He was the chief finance officer, so he's the guy who gives the money away, right? So he raised it really quickly. This guy down here, he was compliance. He wasn't getting the money. So he was on the boat for a little bit longer. But you can imagine, you do the sums, you know, you have 3 of those chief officers from the C-suite from Barclays. You don't let them off the boat until they've raised at least 10 grand each. By the way, it's not transferable, so he could not bail him out. That was just a nice to have. But you start to understand, if you put 3 of those guys on for an hour and you run this event for 2 or 3 days, and then you get competition around the banks, you can see how this thing really starts, in all seriousness, to raise some serious money. And that's what we've seen in the United States, which is where I was as a fundraiser. When I started to work on these events. First event I ever did, and it's still my favorite. It is my first fundraising love. Sorry about the fun thing, but it is. You don't have to shoehorn it into this event. It is hilarious. Best networking ever, because the kind of people you get in jail, you get some real, if you get it right, you get some real heavy hitters and some really good potential donors in jail. It can raise considerable income. It loves technology. I only wish I'd had that technology when I was doing it back in the day. It's scalable. You can do a small one, you can do a big one. And it will flex to your mission if you are creative enough. So that's what I wish I'd thought of. I didn't think of it, but I've done it enough times and I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I love that idea. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the parent of 3 small children, so I would be phoning people up asking them to keep me there. Hey, kids. Okay, I'd also like, before we have the next speaker, I should apologise. If you notice that I haven't read out job titles at all throughout the event until Lisa's, and I only read out half of it, and as I sat down, I looked back and went, oh, shit. Sorry. Okay, so next up is Ashley Rowthorne from the Legacy Group. I don't know where the clicker is.
Hi everyone. I would like to introduce you to my good friend. This is Margit on the left. She's one of those really annoying types that is just always in a good mood. 9 o'clock on a Monday morning conference call, she's got a beaming smile, she's full of the joys of life, because that's just who she is. She's a really creative person, and she cleared out her front garden, and what she decided to do was to put a little storyboard in her front garden so that everybody who walks past gets to see like an inspirational message, a motivational message every day. And she's been doing that for the last 4 years, every day, day in, day out. And it's meant that she's got to meet a lot of fascinating people, lots of people in her community that get walking past. And one of those people that she met recently was Eddie Pardee. Now, Eddie saw one of her messages on her boards and got chatting. And Eddie said to Margit, did you know, I used to live in that house that you live in now. For 38 years, I lived there with my wife and our daughter. But when my wife died, the house was kind of too big for us. So I moved out, and I live in a flat around the corner. So they used to see each other and chat, and they kind of became friends. And then last year, Margit realised that it had been about 6 months and she hadn't seen Eddie. So she was kind of asking around other neighbours if she could kind of track him down, because she didn't actually know where he lived. And then a mutual neighbour said, actually, I think I know who you mean. You mean Eddie. He actually lives in the flat below me. And the reason you haven't seen Eddie is because he's got cancer. So Margit was kind of really taken back by that, and being who she is, she wrote a Christmas card. It was just before Christmas, and she took it round to the flat and she put it through his door. And it turned out Eddie was in, and he got the card and he said, oh, Margit, I'd love it if you could come in. I'd love to show you my flat. And she thought, oh, that's a slightly strange request, but yeah, of course, I'll come in and see your flat. And she said as soon as she stepped in, she was like, it was like a museum. It was like a shrine to Elvis Presley. Now, it turned out that Eddie had this secret love of Elvis Presley, so much so that he was actually a secret Elvis impersonator, and he'd recorded himself singing loads of songs, but he'd never told anyone. So they had a great time chatting, and then Margit was leaving. She said, you know, here's my number. If there's anything you need, if you ever want to talk to me, ask me anything, just let me know. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, Margit, there is something that you could help me with. Now, you got in the local paper, didn't you, with your storyboard. I'd really love it if you could help me get in the paper, because I'd like to share with people my love of Elvis and my collection. So Margit, again, being the creative person she did, she got a friend round who was a professional photographer, took loads of photos, got the local paper interested. And last week, Eddie was in the paper. And you see Eddie's story, he said, this is my legacy. And I want to make sure that it's preserved for the future. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because Eddie's story is a great example of the bequest motive that actually research shows us is kind of universally present in us. We want to know that kind of after we're gone, we can live on in some way. So my I wish I thought of that idea is actually an ongoing piece of research that I want to talk to you about. And it's by a chap in the States called Professor Russell James. And he's been doing some neuroimaging research to kind of understand what's going on in the minds of donors. And it kind of goes something like this. So Russell would get a load of people and he'd put them in an MRI scanner. And he'd say, I'd like you to think about giving a gift to a charity or donating your time now, maybe in the next few months, to a charity that's close to your heart. And the MRI scanner would scan their brain. And then he'd say, okay, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'd like you to think about leaving a gift in your will to maybe a family member or a loved one in the future. And again, it would scan the brain and he'd understand what was going on. And what he found was there's a fundamentally different part of our brain that's involved when we're thinking about giving in the here and now and when we're thinking about giving in our wills and in the future. And there's two parts of our brain that are involved. There's the lingual gyrus and the precuneus, and they're in the back of your brain, and it's part of your emotional memory. And the lingual gyrus is actually part of the visual system, and quite poetically, if you've got that part of your brain damaged, you lose the ability to dream. And the precuneus is often known as the mind's eye, and it's kind of what gives us the ability to have a third-person perspective of ourself. And similar parts of the brain are activated. If you get in studies where they've had older people kind of looking through photo albums of themselves, looking back on their lives and remembering kind of key events, these same parts of the brain are activated. So Russell's kind of helped, and he's coined this idea of that legacy giving is about visualized autobiography. So it's about when people give gifts in their wills, they're thinking back, they're looking back on their life, about their events, about their values, about the things that have been important to them. And it's, in essence, that legacy gift becomes the last chapter in the donor's life story. And Russell's gone on to do some more research, and this kind of simple idea of just story and storytelling is proven to be a really powerful way of encouraging more people to leave gifts to charity in their will. In fact, he's found that the more stories we tell, the more likely we are to encourage people to consider and leave gifts to charity in their will. So this insight, particularly in part, is really changing our understanding of legacy giving, and it's helping fundraisers right around the world to have really powerful conversations with their supporters. And you know, at a time where we are poised to experience the biggest transfer of wealth in human history. We know over the next 20 or 30 years, there's going to be about £6 trillion worth of assets just in the UK that are going to be handed from one generation to the next. So this gives us an opportunity where we as fundraisers can kind of help meet a real deep human need in our donors, and for people like Eddie to find kind of meaning and help their life story live on, and equally raise potentially billions of pounds for the causes they cared about. Thank you.
Wow. I think we absolutely need more brain scans. Next year, I think that should definitely be a theme, and obviously more Elvis. Okay, next up, again, I briefed you at the start, this is our second audition winner. This is Catherine Harris from Above and Beyond.
Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. I just want to say hello to my sister, who I know is watching at home. Thank you so much. So I would like to talk to you about the best use of music in fundraising. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk to you about Band-Aid. You've not gone back 20 years. What I'd like to talk to you about is Hope and Homes for Children's End the Silence campaign. But first of all, more brain scans, unfortunately. But I want to show you 2 brain scans of children. The child on the left has grown up in a loving home. The child on the right has grown up in conditions similar to an orphanage. 8 million kids grow up in orphanages across the world. And it is scientifically proven that growing up without love, hugs, eye contact, and being able to build personal relationships with people damages your brain development. And the sheer size difference between these 2 brains shows the significance of that. And potentially, the most harrowing fact is that for 80% of children in orphanages, either one of their parents is still alive, but factors such as poverty, discrimination, and disabilities are keeping their family apart. But Hope and Homes for Children are working on a global... working on a global level to eradicate institutionalised care to ensure that no child grows up without love. It's not an easy sell, especially considering that people still volunteer in orphanages. People are still asking me to fund their gap years to build them. But in 2017, Hope and Homes for Children introduced a campaign that brought the urgent need for support and policy change to a global audience. I'm going to hand over to some people that you might well recognise to introduce the campaign to you.
After listening to that bit.
Man, it takes me back, man. What a song.
Man, standing up from that gave me goose pimples.
There's so many records from my childhood, but that one was so important.
I just remember this song specifically really giving me strength.
It was more than just music and a song we liked. It was the family coming together.
There should never be silence in a child's life.
I mean, it's quite difficult to even put yourself in that place to think about it because it's so upsetting.
Music is really important for young children.
I think the absence of it is just unthinkable, really.
No child should have to endure life in an orphanage deprived of love and without music and family.
You need love to be able to express love towards the world, and to grow up without it, it's a dangerous thing.
I think everyone deserves love and kindness and understanding, and those children just as much as anybody else.
I hope you'll join me in sharing the music from your childhood and supporting End the Silence. I'd love to hear your stories. Please share your memory now at endthesilence.com or the link below.
So I never thought that I'd use Sir Elton John as my warm-up act, but there you go, anything can happen. So, working with a team at YouTube, Hope and Homes developed an interactive music locker where anyone from Sir Elton to my mum can enter the song that reminds them of their childhood. The site prompts you to choose an artist and then a song, and it then asks you to write a little blurb about why you've chosen it. Ideas such as mine that you're kind of going to come up were very popular. The site then prompts you to make a donation, and this for me is where it got really good. The 2 suggested donation amounts are either the year that the song came out or the length of the song. Yeah, I had that. I had that when I first went on. I thought it was incredible because it shows the donor an amount that is special to them and that their song has dictated. At this point, I just want to point out the differed age match banner at the top of the website, and also the powerful use of positive imagery, focusing on the impact, not on the cause. So you're all fundraisers. I know you're like, oh yeah, but did it work? Yes, it did. The target was to raise £1.6 million, and to date they've raised 2.4. That doesn't include the differed age match, so amazing results. A secondary target was to increase engagement. Over 10,000 people have put their songs onto the website. And one stat that really sums it up is that Ed Sheeran uploaded his video to his fans, or Cheerios as they're actually called, and it has been viewed over 3 million times. Since I did this presentation, he's a very busy man, but he works quickly because his fans loved his video. So why do I think this campaign is great? First up, nostalgia. Who doesn't love a Throwback Thursday or a Throwback Friday? They get the likes on Instagram, but the nostalgia they really tapped into that feeling and emotion, and it shows that Hope and Home's really got to know their audience. And this campaign has been genuinely personally relatable, and it's made Hope and Home's somewhat difficult cause easy to get across to the masses. Secondly, teamwork. The grants team were able to secure the differed training, the comms team were able to secure some fantastic celebrity ambassadors, and all of the team at Hope and Homes got behind this campaign. Secondly, essence. Hope and Homes have been talking about the silence in orphanages since 2000. It's taken them over 15 years to develop it into a campaign, and they've managed to turn it into something that is groundbreaking and unique. So what can you take away from this? And I know that I definitely will do. Find your essence. What is it about your cause that sets you apart from the rest and makes you stand out in this market? It's taken these guys 15 years, so don't worry if it takes you a little bit of time, but find out what is there for you. Secondly, teamwork. Find a campaign that everybody in your organisation can get behind. Aim high. If I'd have come here today and told you this exact same campaign, but told you that it had been put on by UNICEF, you might not have been that surprised to see those celebrities and the amount that was raised. Hope and Homes for Children have raised over £5 million from this campaign, including the differed match. Last year's income was £9 million. They've got less than 50 employees, and their main office is on a pig farm in Wiltshire. This has been an example of what you can do if you set your sights high. Go away and be more ambitious in all of your fundraising. So here's to Hope and Homes ending the silence once and for all. Thank you so much. Thanks, Lucy.
Wow, that was amazing, wasn't it? Thank you, Catherine. I hadn't seen that. What are the chances? I want more brain scans. 2 slides later there. Oh, all right then. Here they are. Okay, our next speaker is Michael Dent from the Alzheimer's Society.
Right, brilliant. Follow that. Brilliant. So, yeah, I'm Michael from the Alzheimer's Society. It's a privilege to be here at Amnesty International Human Rights Action Centre for 2 reasons. One, I'm a long-standing Amnesty supporter, and I also remember responding to this appeal in 2001. So it's actually lovely to be in the actual Action Centre seeing it all happening. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about crisis at Christmas. I've slightly optimistically chosen the microphone, the clicker, and then my notes for the talk in my pocket. So we're going to be winging it a bit, but no. But no, seriously. So Crisis and Christmas, obviously, as we know, campaign by Crisis, the homeless charity, to provide support, training, education and health for people who are homeless and destitute over the Christmas period. It runs for over 9 days. The first Crisis and Christmas was in 1971, held in a Whitehall church by volunteers and raised £7,000. Year on year, it's grown steadily. But the real game changer, and what I really want to talk about today, is the Reserve a Place campaign proposition, developed by Catalyst Works, introduced in 2009, and this is what I think is really powerful and a real game changer. So what they've done is they've taken So homelessness is quite a complex issue to get your head around it, and they put it down for a specific amount. This year, £26.08. You can reserve one place for a homeless person at Crisis and Christmas. So that place, you can get a hot meal, a hot shower, a health check, dental support, education, and access to crisis services all year round. And what I think is really powerful about that is it's been completely chunked down to that specific amount. It's not £10 could, £20 could. It's real, it's specific, and it's happening now. And for the general of the public, you can really believe and really see how your gift can absolutely make a difference. Here is some creative. Some of this press ad, I've actually taken the picture with my iPhone where it is a bit dodgy, but it does absolutely bring it to life. So here you see the credibility last year, what they did this, so great social proof. And then there's a map here. So if you're sad like me and you're buying the place, you're thinking, actually, I want my place to be on this table. I can really imagine that place, that person being directly supported, and how powerful it is. The other great thing is how they've used chunking to chunk up the gifts. So one place, £26.08. 2 places, £52.16. 10 places, £260, and that's really powerful because it really works for individuals, it works for schools, and it works for corporates. It really brings it to life. And so you see here, really clear chunking, really clear creative, and the great thing about it, the proposition works across all different creative propositions and all different media. It's in direct mail, it's on TV, it's on the radio, it's on press, it's on inserts, it's on door drops, and it's really strong and really powerful. And the best thing is the results. So Crisis at Christmas this year has raised a whopping great £15 million, recruited 100,000 supporters, new supporters at break even, which is absolutely off the scale. And the warm results for the warm segments is 19-to-1 ROI, which is, when I heard that, I almost fell off my chair. Nothing like that we're getting, or anything I've seen. So it's it's fantastic for Crisis and fantastic for the sector. That in these more challenging times, they are breaking even on acquisition, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Also, it's a seamless journey online. So I'm a Crisis donor, donate every year, and then you flow straight onto the website, and it's like they've got the chunking is amazing. 2 places, 3 places, 4 places, 5 places. It really brings it to life. It's specific. It's happening now, and it's really, really powerful. And if you see what they've done here, so this guy, the same person just flows through the creative, which I think is really strong and really powerful. And I don't know what the word is, really genuine. So you see in charity appeals these days, you see £10 could do this, £20 could do this, because this amount is so specific. And I was speaking to the director of fundraising at Crisis last week just to do the campaign justice, and he was going, no, it's really worked out. We're really working it out. The number of hours, the number of people, the number of food, they all work it out specifically. It's not some made-up figure that are winging it. So it's really genuine, and it really comes to life. And now chocolate. So how is this related? So this is the idea of chunking, which is a behavioural science technique, and using what they've done, homelessness is a big complex issue, but they've managed to chunk it down into a bite-sized piece. You can reserve one place and you can really get it. You don't have to understand the complex issues of homelessness and how it really affects people. You can join and support for £26.08. Yeah, interestingly, the average gift on acquisition, cold, £55 on the Crisis and Christmas campaign, which is absolutely off the scale. And how is it relevant to the wider piece? How is it relevant to us? It's thinking about big complex issues. How can you chunk it down to what's really important? So if you think of cancer, cancer is complex, cancer care pathways, redesigning system, diagnosis, research, that whole thing. If you think about what's potentially the most important time, it is potentially the 15 minutes after someone has been diagnosed. That's when the real power is. So that is a potential proposition for Macmillan or anyone else. If you think about other people when they're, say people are, in a hospice towards the end of their life, and what's the most important time? It could be the last 15 minutes of someone's life. When someone is holding their hand, it's that real power. It's really bringing it to life and joining it up. And that's why I think what Crisis has done is so powerful, and it's such a clever proposition that goes across all different types of creative, all different mediums, and it's been going, the Reserve a Place campaign has been going 9 years and has raised a whopping great £63.5 million, so it's absolutely fantastic. So big shout out to the Crisis team and everyone else.
Thank you, Michael. I like to think that what we're doing here is just chunking down. Chunking that, like, you know, charity conferences can be big and unmanageable and complex, can't they? We're just chunking it down into 7 minutes, which is exactly what our next speaker has. Can we welcome, please, Catherine Holloway from Friends of the Earth.
Hello everyone. When looking for inspiration for my presentation for you all today, I thought back to the charities that had an impact on me from an early age. This sort of age, actually. How did I end up becoming a donor? I tried to recall which charities had got me into donating. One of the most common ways that children become familiar with charities and donating must be through collection boxes. There were certainly quite a few collection boxes through my childhood, and I enjoyed using all of them. One particular one engaged me at a very young age and through a really simple but meaningful mechanism. But it wasn't this one, which was on the windowsill at home in our living room. And it wasn't this one, which was outside the pet shop in the town. Note the worn-out nose from all of the petting. That was definitely the case with, in my local town as well. And it wasn't this one, which was in the local supermarket. And this one definitely kept my brother and sister and I occupied whilst Mum was at the checkout. But the collection box that I'm going to talk to you about today combines elements of all of those examples, but bringing them together and creating a donation experience that's totally connected to the cause. And that cause is the RNLI. And if you're not familiar, then here's a little bit about why donating to the RNLI is so important. Their service covers a huge 19,000 miles of UK coastline. They've got 350 lifeboats in their fleet, and more than 4,000 volunteers are crews for those lifeboats, with many more working shoreside. And in their almost 200-year history, they've saved more than 140,000 lives. And a brief moment of audience participation now. Put your hands up if you're from the West Country. A few around. You're all fantastic people, and there'll be West Country hugs for you later. I'm also from the West Country. But even if you're not, even if you haven't had the privilege of growing up in the Southwest, then you may well be from another coastal region in the UK. And if not, I'm sure you visited on holidays and day trips, because everyone's got a connection to the coast, right? So I grew up in Devon, which meant a lot of time spent at the coast. Trips to Exmouth, particularly, would involve walking along the seafront and often past a lifeboat station. And where are we going now? Sorry. Yes, and so it didn't look like this when I was in Exmouth in the 80s. Devon is a little bit behind the times, but not this much. It actually looked a little bit more like this. And inside this boathouse was a collection box. And that collection box looked something like this. And thanks to Lisa at the RNLI, we have an example of that collection box here today. We have to be very careful with this because it's very precious and it's one of only about 5 still in existence. So look but don't touch, I think. I'm going to put it down here carefully. And how this worked is very simple. You'd put a coin in the top of the boathouse and it would feed down into the lifeboat. The lifeboat would shoot out, run down the slipway, and there'd be a little thank you message on the top. Such a simple concept, but really effective. And hopefully now we'll be able to see the sort of slipway launch that inspired this little collection box. It takes a little bit while to get going, but you'll get there. Now, I don't know about you, but I could watch that for hours. I probably fit into Lisa's category of being a lifeboat geek. And the collection box in that lifeboat station in Exmouth allowed me and loads of other kids to pretty much do just that, whilst obviously making that all-important donation at the same time. So why was that collection box so popular? And believe me, it was really popular. Lisa has told me, and the archivist at RNLI have told me, that these collection boxes were so well used that the spring mechanism broke, and unfortunately they were too expensive to fix. And we've been able to test the hypothesis that they would still have the same draw today, because when Lisa was bringing this up on the train this morning from Dorset, she got so much attention she couldn't get any work done the whole journey. So these collection boxes were really engaging to the passerby, even on trains from Dorset. They're simple to use, they're interactive for all, even from a young age, and crucially, they're fun. And they're absolutely cause-led as well. They taught you about the lifeboat service through the really simple action of putting a coin into a collection box. So these collection boxes would draw your attention, they raised awareness of the cause, they gave you that instant gratification as soon as you put your coin in. And they had a real differentiation. I don't think there's really anything else that looked quite like that sort of collection box. And crucially, they gave you that connection between the donor and the charity. And that certainly worked for me. And that model sounds a little bit familiar. So this well-known advertising marketing model, you've got to get a model into a presentation, haven't you? Shows us how the collection box was so effective in prompting donations. And with this model, 2 for the price of 1, you can not only follow my collection box experience, but you can also then map my supporter journey with the RNLI over the years. From that first awareness of the need for this charity through visiting that lifeboat house in Exmouth and the connection that that created, then followed many years of more passive support until I was in more of a position to commit to a regular gift. But what then prompted that particular gift? Well, in 2016, I visited the RNLI College in Poole. And if you haven't been, then please do take a trip down there. It's not only a training college for their volunteers, but it's also a hotel and an events venue. And you can go on tours of the Sea Survival Centre, there's a wave machine, wave tank, and they've got the lifeboat simulator. It's absolutely fantastic and it's totally inspiring. And you can visit the lifeboat factory. This is where they build lifeboats. How amazing is that? The experience of visiting the RNLI in Poole renewed my connection with the charity. It showed me why my money was so needed, and it gave me an interactive, fun, and memorable experience. I'm not suggesting you rely on collection boxes as the central pillar to your fundraising strategy, and I'm certainly not suggesting you go ahead and build a lifeboat factory. But I do think there's something that we can learn here. Most of us are looking at how we can engage future generations in our work and trying to build connections with people via positive experiences. Putting a coin in that collection box in Exmouth certainly did that for me. And I certainly feel pride and privilege and a great sense of satisfaction that my donations can help to contribute to this amazing work. So well done to whoever invented that lifeboat slipway collection box. Thank you for starting me on my journey to becoming a donor. I wish I'd thought of that. And I'll leave you with a quote from the RNLI founder, Sir William Hillary, which inspires the work of the RNLI, but I think can also serve as great inspiration for all of our work as fundraisers. Thank you.
And she took it away. That was fantastic. Thank you, Catherine. When I was a kid, and I used to go and visit my grandparents in Fleetwood, there was one of those in the chip shop, and that really takes me back to me and my granddad. But I've never seen one actually do that. That looks like the most fun you could have with a lot of clothes on, I'd imagine. But that was terrific. Right, our next speaker, it just says on here that he's a consultant. But but until recently, Owen was wrangling UNICEF's fundraising all over the world. Owen Watkins.
Thank you. So, hello, I'm Owen. I usually say I became a fundraiser by accident. That was 18 years ago, so I should probably A, stop saying that, and B, confess that I quite like it. So, as James says, until Christmas, and for the last 10 years, I've been working with UNICEF International fundraising. And I want to talk to you today about something that's quite close to my heart. I want to talk to you about Syria, and I want to talk to you about the white helmets. And I'd also ask you to bear with me, because I kind of struggle to talk about this a little bit, so if I go over my 7 minutes, it'll be because I'm taking a little pause every now and again. Syria is one of those causes a conflict that we all know about, but that I think maybe we don't see. So I'd just like you to see something, and then I'll come on. I'm going to stand here because apparently my mic is not turned on, working, or anything like that. So it probably doesn't work so well if I stand back here. If we think a little bit about Syria, it's a country that's had a civil war for the past 6 years. It is a fractured country. Estimates vary, but over 400,000 people have been killed in Syria in this conflict. 11 million Syrians are displaced, and 5 million children are living in dire situations. As I said, I worked with UNICEF up until very, very recently, and so the children part is one of those parts that really, really resonates. The White Helmets are a first responder group in Syria, and they operate outside of those areas where the government is still in control. What they've done is they've replaced the Syrian civil defense teams. There are civil defense teams in government-held areas. They do very, very similar, phenomenal work. But I'm speaking to you today specifically about the White Helmets. There are 3,300 of them, approximately. There are men and women. There are very, very few women involved. There are approximately 60, 70 women involved as first responders. The reason why there are is that many of the more conservative communities are uncomfortable with men performing rescue operations. And so then they've created female teams to actually support in those areas. Where possible, the White Helmets are trained in Turkey, but obviously to be able to be trained in Turkey, you have to be able to get to Turkey. So that's very much where possible. So how do you understand, how do you engage with the White Helmets? The narrative of the White Helmets, the story of the work that they do and the story of parts of Syria exists almost solely on Twitter. Okay, you can follow what they do on Twitter, and you can understand some of the circumstances that they face and some of the situations that they are trying to respond to and they're trying to work in. Obviously, behind it, there is an online presence because everybody has an online presence. There is a very effective website that talks about the work that they do and that asks you to do a variety of things. advocacy and donations, and so obviously there's a donation page where there's a lot of fundraising best practice there. There's a shopping list, and there are financial amounts that you can donate and the items that they could pay for in terms of supporting the White Helmets and equipping them and ensuring that they can carry out the work that they are there to do. So that presence is there. That's not run by the White Helmets themselves. That's run by the Syria campaign, and it's the Syria campaign that have put together this presence beyond Twitter so that people can support the advocacy efforts, so that people can donate to the White Helmets to support the work that they do. The Syria campaign is there to create a movement of people that want to see a peaceful outcome to the conflict in Syria and an outcome with dignity for all Syrians. They are not the White Helmets, but they think, and I also think, that the work that the White Helmets do is amazing and needs our support. Thank you, sorry. So I'm here to talk to you about the White Helmets because I want to highlight the work that they do. They're not without controversy. The work that they do is not without controversy at all. And I don't want to highlight to you particularly the fundraising elements and the way they raise money and the way they drive advocacy and the support that they're trying to generate for the work that they do and for the work that they do. I wish I thought of that. Supporting and raising money and driving an effort to support the work of the White Helmets, I kind of wish I'd thought of that.
Thank you, Owen. Next up, Open's very own Ali Walker-Davies.
Okay, so I'm Ali Walker-Davies, and the fundraising strategy that I wish I had thought of, bear with me, it's quite a big one, so it's going to take a little bit of explaining, is I wish I thought of leading the resistance. Not actually this resistance, although that'd be pretty cool. This one, the one that's happening in America at the moment, and welcome to our American friends. And who's leading that resistance, and who are they fighting? Well, they're fighting this guy, standing against him, proud. And the people who I think are leading that resistance is these guys, the American Civil Liberties Union. And they're really inspiring, but before I get into why they're my fundraising inspiration, I want to tell you a little bit of information about who they are, and then we'll get into why I think they're so amazing. So the ACLU was founded in 1920 by a group of self-proclaimed idealists, which I think we can all get behind. Their stated goal, and this is quite long, so bear with me, is to defend and preserve the individual rights and liberties guaranteed to every person by the Bill of Rights in the US Constitution and the laws of the United States, which is a snappy intention. But basically what they do is fight government abuse, whoever is in power. They are not a Democratic organization, they're not a Republican organization. They will fight and defend individuals' rights in America, and those rights are freedom of speech and religion, rights like a woman's right to choose, citizens' rights to privacy, and so many more. You can imagine they're pretty busy these days. In the 98 years since they were founded, they've amassed an army of 1.75 million members, nearly 300 staff lawyers who are working constantly, and they have thousands of volunteer attorneys or offices across America. And although they're really busy at the moment, they were kind of prepared for what was coming, and it's the story of how they prepared for Trumpageddon that inspires me, and hopefully it will give you guys a little hope too. So 2016 was a strange year. It was the year that the world had enough of experts, but luckily the experts at the ACLU hadn't had enough of the world. They didn't want to put all of their eggs into one Hillary-shaped basket, so they started doing research on the policies of both presidential candidates. And in July 2016, while so many of us were laughing at Trump, They published the Trump memos, and it's this dossier that catalogues every threat that the Donald posed to American civil liberties, and it's a pretty big document. And then the unthinkable happened. In November 2016, Donald Trump was elected President of the United States, leader of the free world. The ACLU was ready. The next day, it took out a full-page advert in the New York Times, and it started issuing a rallying cry that has been oft repeated: "We'll see you in court." And since we can't be sure that Donald Trump would read a whole page of text, they summarized it into some tweets for him as well. So the battle lines were drawn. Trump would attempt to pass laws that would break the Constitution, and the ACLU would be there to resist. It was a matter of when it would happen, not if, and it was a matter of how the ACLU would fight back. So if we fast forward to January 27th, 2017, Trump's been in office for 1 week, and we're off. Without any care for the US Constitution or people, Trump signed the first draft of the travel ban, effectively banning the entry of Muslim refugees into America. There were over 100 travelers in the air at the point that he signed this who were denied entry to the US when they landed. And there were hundreds more who were trying to board planes that they had bought tickets for to America and they were turned away from. Airports were in chaos. Trump was trampling all over civil liberties, creating a crisis of civil rights, and all the while creating perfect conditions for an emergency appeal. So what would the ACLU do? They could have sent out emails, put out fundraising ads, leapt on this moment to ask for an emergency appeal money to help fight Trump. But instead they did this. They sent lawyers to the airports, and they filed a challenge to Trump's travel ban, so that within 12 hours of it being signed, they had already gone to court to take him down. They heard a rumor that something was coming out, they had their eyes on the ground, they knew what was going on. And then they did this. They set up makeshift legal offices in airports, and they rallied volunteer legal professionals to get down and offer practical help on the ground. They mobilized people to go to local airports and protest. And they were so busy doing all of this that they didn't even ask for any money. But regardless of that, they did raise some along the way. In fact, they raised quite a lot. On the weekend of the 28th of January, they received $24 million online. Now, this is America, and the numbers were always really big over there, so it's hard to put that in context. But hopefully this will help. In 2016, their online income for the whole year was $4 million. Within 1 weekend, they raised 6 times their previous annual income. And it's all because they put themselves forward and were appointed at that point the leaders of the resistance. I'm really passionate about this story. I think it's totally inspiring. And because I wanted to get up here and tell you about it, I thought I'd do some fact-checking. So I spent a time over Christmas going through all of their tweets from the weekend of the travel ban, just to make sure they didn't ask for money once, and they didn't, not once. But what they did do was say thank you a lot. So they were very active on Twitter. They were thanking people for supporting. And the thing that inspired me about this was the ingenuity of everything involved in it. So it's the ingenuity of the ACLU to be on the front foot, to be ready to go, as everyone else was looking on shocked and appalled. They were acting. And it's also the ingenuity of people who took the initiative to donate as an act of rebellion and an act of resistance. So people like this Facebook product designer who set up a Facebook fundraiser and raised over $1 million. And then you had celebrities who were tweeting that they would match any donations made to the ACLU. All you had to do was tweet a photo of your receipt. And then you had dog owners buying ACLU swag for their doggies. Every single act was an act of rebellion and an act of resistance. And when it came time to act, people knew that the ACLU could be counted on because they had proved that they were in it for the long haul. And you're probably thinking that's a great story, hopefully. But we don't have a Donald Trump in this country, which is great. And our charities are more complicated to raise money for than that. Our cause isn't that sexy. It's not that easy to get fired up about what we do. Let me remind you, they raised $24 million to fund lawyers. And it wasn't just a flash in the pan. Since Trump came into power, the ACLU regular givers, or Guardians of Liberty, as they're amazingly called, has grown sixfold. They've gone from 50,000 regular givers to 300,000. So what I wish I thought of, and what the people behind the ACLU had the bravery not just to think, but to do, is to put themselves forward as the leaders of the resistance. Because so many people in the world right now need hope. And if we in our organizations are brave enough to take big, bold actions that the world needs right now, we can become that hope. A new hope. And in the meantime, while we're saving the world, we might raise some money along the way to help pay for it all.
Thank you, Ali. Buried at the start of that presentation was a really important learning, which is no matter how shit your mission statement is, you can still be heroes. We should all remember that. Okay, our next speaker and audition winner. Why is everyone rushing about? It's Serena Castiglione.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. I'm going to talk about Armistice, a campaign that's got bold written all over it. Now, if you were called War Child, and the whole reason why you existed was to stand up for children looking like this, whose lives were torn apart by war, and then one day, a company that made things called World of Tanks came to you and said, we want to work with you. What would you do? Well, I've been a corporate fundraiser and loved it. And I know what my default mode would have been. It would have been to reach out for my ethical policy document. Oh, we've all got those, you know, with a list of sectors you can work with and sectors that are bad. You know, we can't work with them. Now, War Child chose not to do that. War Child decided, we'll call a meeting at the highest level of the organization. We'll bring together the trustees. And the trustee board, by the way, has got not one, but 2 fundraising directors amongst them, which is a bold thing in itself. So they called this meeting, and I thought, actually, let's look at this deeper. Let's weigh up the opportunity against the risk. What is in this? And I saw that actually the opportunity was not just financial. Possibly there was a broader, bigger opportunity into this. So they went for it. But what they decided to do was to create an advocacy framework to work with these gaming studios. So they decided to create this framework, which meant that the gaming studios had to adopt this, and they had to basically spread awareness of global humanitarian law. So they had to say real war is not a game through their partnerships to a much broader audience. So basically they had the gaming studios now playing the War Child game. But that was not enough. They thought there is more to it than this. And what they did was they actually went to headhunt someone, an expert from the gaming industry, to manage this partnership. Someone who had no fundraising experience, knew nothing about NGOs, to manage this partnership and to actually do the new business side, to look into this industry, this sector, and see what else they could do. So by then they had their boldness and they had their in-house expertise. And that's when the magic happened. They created Armistice. So Armistice was now a campaign which was not just, wasn't just with one studio. It brought together the whole of the gaming industry to raise funds and awareness for War Child. So how did that work? Basically, the whole partnership was about pacifying the games. So they asked the industry, the studios, to develop modifications to their games, to adapt the games so they would become more peaceful. So for example, in this game, a soldier had a weapon, and then within the game, suddenly the weapon turns into a snowball. Nice, yeah? Then what else did they do? They challenged the gamers, this world of people, to do pacifist runs. So they were challenging them to play for 36 hours. I don't know how you can do it. 36 hours without killing anybody. They had to complete their game without killing anybody. And they raised funds through that. And they also were selling special pacifist emblems as add-ons to the games. Now, needless to say, this was a great financial success. They raised $130,000 in 8 weeks with minimal investment. They reached 90,000 people through this campaign. But what I think, what I love about this campaign is that it wasn't just about smashing fundraising targets. This fundraising, to me, smashed convention, smashed the things that we all do where we're not really thinking deeply. In so many areas of fundraising, and they had to be bold every step of the way when they were doing that. So they were bold when they chose to look deeper into an opportunity and not to go for the ethical policy list. They were bold when they decided to recruit a fundraiser who had no fundraiser experience but was a gaming expert. They were also bold, and I really feel strongly about this, that they created their own market. As corporate fundraisers, the default mode, again, is to go for those industries that got CSR departments, they got budgets, they got a great giving history, etc. But they didn't do that. They decided to work with a sector that had no CSR teams, that had never given to anybody. Well, what they did have was a real connection to the cause and a real opportunity. And they're really bold because by appealing to the gamers, they actually created a whole new market of donors for themselves. I mean, generally, charities seem to target me and people like me every single time. So women of a certain age living in the southeast who have a history of giving, they didn't want me. They wanted and created a whole new market of fundraisers, people who had never thought of giving before, probably. That's why it's got bold written all over it. And really, I wish I could be as bold as that all the time.
Thank you, Serena. So we are drawing to the end. We have our last speaker, who I'm sure is going to be an absolute showstopper. Ladies and gentlemen, Damien O'Brien for Nasty.
In 1992, I was a young, angry, idealistic student union activist with a really great haircut and a fondness for standing up in front of large crowds of people and, ranting about stuff. You'll have noticed that some of these things haven't changed. 1992 was also the year that the Irish government took out an injunction to stop a 14-year-old pregnant girl who'd been raped by a neighbour from travelling to the UK for abortion. The X case, as it became known, was both the low point and the turning point of the long struggle for abortion rights in Ireland. The religious right had been on the attack for a decade. The few non-directive pregnancy counselling services in Ireland had been closed down. Cosmopolitan magazine, before it could be imported into the country, had to have the ads at the back of the magazine, the pages with the abortion clinic ads, ripped out before it could come in. And it was even illegal to give a woman the phone number of the Mary Stopes Clinic in London. The only place left for a woman in Ireland in the early 90s to get information on abortion was a number of the students' unions. I was a student union officer at the time, and SPUC, the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children, sorry about that, came after us with a vengeance. 18 of my fellow student union officers were threatened with bankruptcy and jail for publishing the numbers of British abortion clinics, service providers in the handbooks. We were the last women and men standing in the battle for abortion rights. And through a combination, I think, of youthful bloody-mindedness and genuine passion and commitment to the cause, we persevered and we kept at it. There's one particular moment in 1992 that I still remember very, very clearly. It was an afternoon in the spring, not long after the X case, and a woman, a student in my college, came to see me in my office. I was president of the student union at the time. She'd brought a friend with her from down home, down the country. Her friend was 16. She was nearly 20 weeks pregnant. She was still in school. She couldn't tell her parents. She couldn't talk to her doctor. She'd no one to discuss it with, nowhere to go, no money or means to travel. Standing here today, I can still see the terror on her face. I think I was probably terrified myself talking to her. And how hard must it have been for her, young and pregnant in a still oppressively Catholic Ireland at the time, to walk in that door with no one to turn to but a scruffy student union officer for help. We were well drilled. We didn't counsel or advise people who came to us. We simply put them in touch with the organisations and the people who could help. One of those organisations was a group of volunteers called the Irish Women Abortion Support Network Irish Women's Abortion Support Group in London, set up by some Irish feminists who lived there. They would meet women off the boat or off the plane, provide them with a friendly face, place to stay, and help them with the costs of the travel and the procedures. Fast forward 25 years, abortion is still illegal in Ireland. Another 125,000 women have taken that trip to London or Liverpool. And a new organisation has emerged to help them, Abortion Support Network. ASN is one of my favourite charities. And one of the things that they've been doing really well for a number of years now is they've asked their donors, why do you support Abortion Support Network? This is one of those really simple things that we should all be doing, because donors love to be asked, and they love to tell you why they give. I'll tell you why I support ASN. I support ASN because I still remember those two women who came to me in 1992. And I support them because of all the other women of my generation, other generations, who have had to get the boat or the plane and come over here to get a procedure that they should be able to get at home. And for all the women who simply feared that one day they might need to do that. Women who were let down by their country and their countrymen. But where this moves from simply a nice idea to, wow, I wish I'd thought of that, is what Abortion Support Network did with this and did next. Recruiting regular donors had been a real problem for ASN. They tend to focus on the rising demand and how much your money could do to help with that, paying for the helpline or the costs of travel or accommodation for their clients. Demand was continuing to grow. Numbers of regular donors wasn't. Then a couple of years ago, they hit on their light bulb moment. They realised that the best people to make the case to support ASN were the people who already supported them. And they had a bank of stories about why they could do that. So instead of talking about the nuts and bolts of what your money could do, they led with the answer to that question, why do you support ASN? And over the course of a month, when they rolled out their Fairy Godmother campaign, using emails and social media, they filled them with their donors' voices, why they gave and what that giving meant to them. So rather than simply just being a plea for support, this was an invitation to like-minded people to share their values and express those values with a gift. I'm going to read this one. Why do I support ASN? Several reasons. Because when I had an unplanned pregnancy as a teenager, I was living in Britain, so I had a choice. And I made my choice and chose to continue the pregnancy. Because when my friend had an unplanned pregnancy, she was living in Britain, so she had a choice. And she made her choice and chose not to continue the pregnancy. Because we both got to choose what was right for ourselves. Because my sister is a midwife, so I know how dangerous pregnancy and birth can be. Because I've had a miscarriage, but I was living in Britain, so I received the appropriate medical treatment promptly. Because I've had 3 pregnancies, so I know the toll it takes on your body. Because I'm a parent, so I know how that changes you forever, how it can push you to breaking point. Because when I moved to Ireland, I didn't know that abortion was illegal there, and I was terrified for my bodily sovereignty when I found out. So I do this. I put my money where my mouth is. or help provide genuine practical support to women in their hour of greatest need. This I can do. On the surface, this can seem like a deceptively simple campaign, but at its heart, it's remarkably sophisticated. It's using really important techniques around social proofing, around the idea of donor identity, and around the shared values of the donor and the organisation. And it shows the power of building a community of passionate, pissed-off people. And it worked a treat. ASN isn't a big charity, so these numbers may seem quite small to you, but this was a campaign that ran over 4 weeks using simply email and social media with a budget of precisely £0, but a brilliant insight into what inspired donors to give. A postscript to this, if I have time. As I'm talking to you, Dáil Éireann, the Irish Parliament, is debating proposals for a referendum that, if passed, will end the constitutional ban on abortion. The arc of justice has taken a long time to bend on this one from the dark days of 1992, but it's possible, by the summer, that this fight will have been won. I'm proud to support ASN, but I'll be even more proud if by the end of this year they neither want nor need my money. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Damien. Fantastic. That's pretty much it, apart from me talking a bit more. So I am now the only thing standing between you and a free bar. So being clever, I'm going to try and get this out of the way as quickly as possible. Actually, I might switch to... Is this still on? What does it cost to do this? So... Right. Ooh. This bit's important. We've got our vote now. So as I said earlier, we've never been quite clear about whether it's the idea you like best, the person you like best, the presentation you like best, or perhaps a combination of all three, but whatever, we'd like you to vote. So on the screen are your keywords. I think you've got a postcard as well. You don't have to do it now, but at some point before you leave the hall, certainly before you go underground, because it's down there that the whole mobile thing starts showing its limitations. So yeah, while you've still got a signal, please vote. Because not only will that register your vote and give us all something to talk about later, it also means we can stay in touch with you, which is terrific. Right, so that is it for another year, apart from to say thank you. First, actually, I'm going to go through this list, and rather than everyone clapping loads at the start, and then as I get to like the fifth thank you, like, let's do it all at the end. So I'm going to go through the list and then we can get out of it, okay? So I want to say a massive thank you to all our speakers, particularly to our I Want to Talk at That auditionees. It does take a lot of nerve to come up and do that, and I am full of admiration for them. On that subject, thank you to the mentors who gave their time and expertise to support those guys. That was Lucy Caldecott, Lucy Edwards, and in a surprise break from Lucy's, Julie Weston. So a massive thank you to them. That was brilliant. A huge thank you to Ken Burnett for having the idea of Sophie and setting in train all of this fun and games. A huge thank you to Sue Kershaw at Sophie, who has organised this event on the Sophie side. A massive thanks to Fiona Patterson, who's standing down here, who has organised this on the open side. Thank you to Amnesty International, first of all for being Amnesty International, but also for giving us a deal on the theatre. That really helps everything. James and Claire for the live screening, Alfie for monitoring Twitter. I'm very sorry, our friend from Amnesty who's been running the desk so brilliantly, thank you very much. Absolutely everyone from the Open team who's here working and volunteering. And finally, thank you to all of you for turning up and supporting. It's been great. Thank you very much. The bar is where you got your coffee. See you there.